latest episode of the Dribble Drive podcast. I am your host, Austin Render. Thanks so much for joining us. If you're watching us live on the YouTube channel, thanks for coming along with us. If you're listening to us in podcast form after the fact, that's just as great. We appreciate you listening to us. Give us a download, a like, a rating. That kind of stuff really helps us. All our podcasts are available on the Apple and Spotify podcast links, as well as on the Back Home Network YouTube channel in video form, which is where we are broadcasting live at right now. We are a part of the Back Home Network, which is brought to you by Home Field Apparel. Give us a follow on Twitter at Dribble Drive WDB is where you can find us there. As we start off the college basketball season, boy, did it start off with a bang yesterday. Some great games. We're going to get into all of that here today on this show. Did tweet this out earlier this morning. I want to let everybody know that we are going to move our release times to noon on Tuesdays. There's a lot of Sunday basketball games in women's college basketball, especially in the Big Ten. So the easiest way for us to be able to talk to athletes, get some coaches on the show, is to give them that Monday, which is usually an off day that we recover, and we bring them in on Tuesday. So Tuesday at noon on the Back Home Network YouTube channel. We're going to try and do more of these like literal live shows where you folks can jump in the comments, let me know. And please feel free to do that today. If you had takeaways from day one of the college basketball season, jump in the live chat and let us know. But either we'll be broadcasting live or we'll do the live watch along as we've been doing all off season. That's Tuesday at noon on the Back Home Network YouTube channel. Without further ado, let's talk some basketball from yesterday. And we're going to have the scrolls. If you're watching with us, the bottom, we're going to turn that into a score ticker. But a lot of stuff went on yesterday. Obviously, the headliners were in Paris. So we'll start with our first segment, which is the game of the day yesterday. And that, to me, was the third-ranked USC Trojans taking down the 20th-ranked Ole Miss Rebels, 68-66. I had to step away in the third quarter for about 10 minutes, and USC was up 10, 12 points, and I'm thinking, okay, they're starting to take control of this game. It was a slow start. Both teams very much looked like it was their first game of the season. I step away. I come back into the room thinking, okay, USC is probably going to be up 15, 16, 17 points. Kind of felt like they were getting control of the game. It's a 4-point game when I walk back into the room, and it was really getting tight. And USC went over 7 minutes without a basket in the fourth quarter. They just kept getting to the free throw line. And they found a way to win, which is worth something in early November, finding a way to win, especially against a team in Ole Miss that I think is going to prove to be a very good team, certainly a tournament team out of the SEC. So for USC, it certainly feels worthwhile to mention that they got themselves the win, but it was ugly. I mean, it was a really, really ugly performance by both sides. Neither team shot the ball well in this game. USC turned the ball over 26 times, 9 of them from Juju Watkins, who did end up having 27 points and a double-double, but the 9 turnovers was an issue. I thought both teams really struggled on the defensive glass. Both teams got a bunch of offensive rebounds. We did learn something from Ryan Rucco, the play-by-play broadcaster for ESPN in that game, that we've all been saying Kiki Iriafen, her name. We've been saying her name wrong. We've been saying Iriafen. It's Iriafen is the way that they have changed that pronunciation to now that she is with the USC Trojans. And Iriafen was terrific in this game on the glass, gave them another double-double as well. I thought the standout for USC, though, we knew what Juju Watkins was going to be, and she was great. And a slow start, she got them going the second quarter. But I thought when the team itself came out slow, freshman Kennedy Smith was the kind of spark plug that kept USC from going under early in the game. She got them off to a good start. You can tell she was not afraid of the moment. This is an extremely talented recruiting class. I believe the number 1 recruiting class in the nation. So Kennedy Smith was very impressive to me in the way she played. Ole Miss's defense is tough, though, and they're going to get after you for 60 minutes or 40 minutes, and they made it difficult on USC, made some timely shots there. With KK Deans making some shots late to send it into a tighter game in the fourth quarter. But give USC credit again. I think it's worth something in early November when you know you're not going to be playing your best basketball. You know there's going to be bumps and detours and roadblocks as you go through, but give them credit for finding a way to win. That is not exactly something that everyone can say on opening day. And when you've got a big target on your back like USC, I think Coach Yo, the head coach of Ole Miss, said to the ESPN broadcasters, like, I don't really know what we're doing playing this game, but she figured it was going to be a good opportunity for her team to be in Paris, to maybe test themselves against a really good team. But she seemed to have some doubts about the way her Rebels would come out and play. And they were down 15 in the third quarter and got it all the way back to where they had the lead late. A back-breaking turnover by Ole Miss with about 20 seconds left. But again, USC finding a way, despite its shooting struggles, to get the win, I think is worth something. They've got some time off. They're going to go play Cal Poly on Saturday. But again, that's the game of the day yesterday. It came down to the wire. And certainly USC deserving of a shout out for getting the win there. They're going to have to be better. You know that. But I thought they were very good. All right, next one, Coach of the Day. That one's going to go to Corey Close, who was just terrific in this game for UCLA. I name her Coach of the Day because we didn't know this, but UCLA was without Kiki Rice, and a first-team All-Big Ten performer preseason, somebody who's expected to have a huge impact in this conference, got hurt in practice, could not go in the opener. I'd imagine a lot of your preseason plans when you have Lauren Betts and Kiki Rice is centered around those two, your point guard and your big. And when you lose the point guard, it makes things a lot more difficult. It's not as if UCLA was just opening this season off against a directional school or an opportunity to get an easy win. They were opening it up in Paris against a top 20 team in Louisville and a feisty defensive team in Louisville that plays hard, plays fast, and they handled it well. I mean, they were much more in control of this game than USC was against Ole Miss. Now, Louisville kept it tight, and that's because Louisville's a very good team, but UCLA, I was so impressed missing your point guard and not really missing a beat. Now, I mean, they certainly would have been in a better position had they had Kiki Rice, but others stepped up. I mean, Tamia Gardner had 15 points, knocked down 5 3-pointers. Lauren Betts set the tone early, man. She was terrific. I mean, we watched all of last season, Camila Cardoso of South Carolina. Nobody could defend her. And the way that it feels like Lauren Betts could be very similar to that. A 6'7" center in the women's game is so difficult to defend. She finishes with 18 points and 13 rebounds. They held Louisville to 32% shooting and 21% from the three-point line. That's big time in my opinion. I mean, that's a good Louisville team. They had some good freshmen step up throughout the game, but for the most part, UCLA knew, okay, we're missing Kiki Rice. We're going to have to change the game plan up. We're going to probably have to win this game with defense. And they did just that. I was so impressed with the way UCLA handled its business. I thought for the most part, when I was able to watch this game, that they were in control. Louisville certainly had its moments, but especially down the stretch in the fourth quarter, there was never really a moment where I thought, oh boy, UCLA is in trouble here. They were just calm, collected. They figured it out and had a really nice finish to the game and ended up putting away Louisville. So I was impressed with UCLA. Turnovers are going to be a theme throughout this show. We had said 26 for USC, 22 for UCLA. That is an issue all across basketball when you get the season started. And for UCLA, it was an issue as well. But they overcame it. They get the win. Anytime you got to travel, I don't know how many time zone that is, but a lot of them for the LA schools to go from LA all the way to Paris, France, and they get a win. That's a really nice start to the season. They have the week off as well. They'll play Colgate on Sunday. But again, Coach of the Day goes to Corey Close because you lose your point guard right before you're about to play a really scrappy defensive Louisville team, and she game planned around it. It got UCLA a really nice win there on the road. All right, Freshman of the Day transitions us into maybe the biggest surprise of the Big Ten, which was the Michigan Wolverines, and the Freshman of the Day is Silas Swords in her first collegiate start against the number one team in the country and the defending national champions. Silas Swords was the opposite of afraid at this moment. She attacked it. 27 points and 12 rebounds for Swords in Las Vegas. Michigan comes up short, but how can you not come away from this game massively impressed with what Michigan did? And so much so, I just pulled up ESPN to get all the stats in front of me before we went live. And I love, we had Charlie Cream on the broadcast during the summer, and he already put an updated bracketology up after one day of college basketball. I don't think it's going to become a daily thing, but I do like that he put it up. And he already put Michigan in the field. We talked about Michigan when Charlie Cream was on the show. Go back and listen to that episode. He was kind of passive on the Wolverines. They started 3 freshmen. We saw that yesterday in Las Vegas. It's a brand new team. They lost a ton of production from last season. And so a lot of people, including myself, including Charlie Cream, have kind of been like, okay, we'll believe it when we see it with Michigan. And on day one, we saw it. I mean, those freshmen were not scared of the moment. They were under the brightest lights in Las Vegas against the defending national champion. And Silas Sword stood out among everybody on that floor. She was terrific, aggressive. I think there's some teachable moments in terms of shots maybe she didn't need to take, but I was really impressed with the way that she performed in that contest. And I think Michigan has to be thinking that they are in a much better spot than they were 24 hours ago. And so much so, Charlie Cream has put Michigan in the field. In his projected field, they're an 8 seed now. They were not anywhere on the bubble or in the field coming into the season. And he, as well as many of us, very impressed with the way that Kim Barnes-Arico's squad performed. She would have been my second coach of the day because she put that team in a great position to win that game. Couldn't quite get it down the stretch. Neither team could really make a shot there in the fourth quarter, but give a lot of credit to Michigan, to Silas Swords. Jordan Hobbs was also very good, 19 points for her. Outside of that, though, that's where Michigan, and that's the thing with Michigan this year, is going to be where do they get the depth from? You had 27 from Swords, 19 from Hobbs. That puts you at 46. They only scored 16 more points among everyone else on the team. No one else had more than 5 points. So the question to me is, where's the depth for Michigan? But so impressed with Silas Swords. Their defense was really good against South Carolina. This was the blueprint 2 years ago against South Carolina, which was let them shoot the three. They weren't a very good three-point shooting team until Iowa beat them in the Final Four 2 years ago. Last year, they obviously got way better. Tahina Powell was terrific. Tessa Johnson was also really good. I got to see that firsthand in the Sweet 16 when Indiana took on South Carolina. But South Carolina just 5 of 26 from 3 last night, 33% from the floor as a team. That's concerning. But again, it's day one, and day one sees bad shooting performances. That's not all that surprising. What I thought was surprising was Michigan on the glass, 52-52, a total even rebounding battle for a team in Michigan that essentially starts 5 guards. I mean, they do not have a ton of forward depth. Van Timmeren came off the bench. The transfer from Boston College gave him some good minutes. But for the most part, this is a team that's going to play a ton of guards. Silas Swords, Olivia Olson, Jordan Hobbs, we saw, as well as Camp Schroeder was in there, and Mila Holloway. So all guards basically to start things off. But again, Van Timmeren gave them good minutes. And to see them even with South Carolina on the glass, very impressive for Michigan. Again, they don't win. They lose by 6, 68-62. But I think that is a massive win for Kim Barnes-Arico, who, when we talked to Matt Park on the podcast episode about Michigan, he mentioned that there was a bit of surprise in this program with how many people did end up leaving. Obviously, Layla Felia is the big one now at Texas. But the fact that they just kind of put their heads down and worked through it. They lost a ton of production. They bring in the best freshman class they've ever had at Michigan, and they perform. If you are a Michigan fan, your expectations of this team just drastically changed from last night's performance despite the loss. All right, as we get into some of the other action of the Big Ten, I do want to put the caveat out there that I do work for a Big Ten squad, and so it does busy the schedule up a bit. So I can't catch every single game that happens around the conference, but was able to kind of skim through some of the action outside of those 3 marquee games on national television. And my player of the day is Mariah Murray of Penn State. 28 points. She knocked down 8 3-pointers in a win for Penn State. They knocked off Belmont 90-68. Penn State's a big question mark because they were so close last year to making it to the Big Ten or to the NCAA tournament. I think if they had been matched up against anybody other than Iowa in the Big Ten tournament, they could have won the game and maybe found their way into the NCAA tournament with a win or two in the postseason. But they lose almost everybody. Owusu, Marisa, Chesky, Capitas, Valladay, Brigham, all gone. I mean, their top 5, 6, 7 scorers gone from last year. Jayla Oden, their top returning scorer at 5.5 points a game. They bring in some talent from both the freshman pool and the transfer portal, But the question is, how are they going to put all this together? Caroline Keeger's in her 5th year. They're still trying to make it to the tournament for the first time in her tenure. I think the question is, where's the offense going to come from? And Mariah Murray just came out and said, I'll take care of it. And a player who played sparingly last year for Penn State comes out, knocks down 8 3-pointers en route to a 28-point performance. Penn State jumped out 33-15 to the opening quarter and kind of made sure, and I put Belmont up there on the screen. They played Bucknell. But an impressive performance by them to just kind of make sure Bucknell knew right off the bat that this was Penn State's game to have. And it was kind of back and forth in quarters 2 and 3, and eventually Penn State put them away. But impressed with Penn State because I didn't know what we were going to get from Penn State. And to see Mariah Murray play that well. Gracie Merkel was also very good in this contest. She's a Bellarmine transfer. Merkel giving them some size down low, 21 points, 13 rebounds for her. They'll take on Canisius on Thursday and Duquesne on Sunday. So busy week 1 for Penn State, certainly far from being done for the Nittany Lions. Some other action around the Big Ten. Maryland gets a win on the road at UMBC, 74-32. Not a whole lot to take out of this game other than just seeing some of these Maryland players playing together in a game that matters for the first time. 11 Terrapins scored in this game. Christina Dulce, the leading scorer, 13 points, 10 rebounds. The issues for Maryland, though, were a little bit last year with three-point shooting. That continued just 15%, 2 of 13 from the three-point line. And they, too, had turnover issues, 22 of them. But defensively, Maryland really good. Held UMBC to just 10 made baskets the entire game. They shot 23% as a team. Maryland's going to be a team we learn a lot about this week. They have Coppin State on Thursday, but then they play number 11 Duke on Sunday. We'll talk about that in a moment. They've also got a big game at Syracuse next week. So a lot of stuff going on for Maryland. In fact, let's do it now. They're my game of the week upcoming here in the rest of the week. We'll do this each time we have an episode as well, naming our game to watch for in the upcoming week. It's number 11 Duke, number 18 Maryland, Sunday afternoon on Fox Sports 1. A very good game. This is a Duke team that had a nice, solid runaway win yesterday as well. I believe they played Radford at the opening game. Duke's a really good squad, and Carl Lawson's got them playing some really good basketball. So I'd be curious to see how Duke plays at Maryland. And Maryland, again, we've talked about it in the previews. We talked about it last week with Megan McEwen. There's so much unknown with this Terrapin team. We do know that Cheyenne Sellers, Bree McDaniel, really good, and they come back. But a ton of transfers. Christina Dulce, one of those. She led the team in scoring last night. Very curious to see how Maryland plays in a true test on Sunday. A good thing for Maryland is it wasn't the opening game. So they get this game at UMBC. They get the game on Thursday against Coppin State, kind of working on lineups, who can play with who, what lineups work best, and then they can be ready for that Duke game on Sunday afternoon. Very excited for that one. In Nebraska, the Cornhuskers take down Omaha easily, 88-48. Big second quarter. They won the quarter 26-4 to kind of pull away. I was watching the early part of this game. They pressed Omaha heavily, and it was very effective. Got a ton of steals, got some easy buckets. The second quarter, as we mentioned, they totally took advantage of Omaha, 26-4. Markowski, 14 points, 11 rebounds. They had 6 total Cornhuskers in double figures, and great to see Allison Widener back for Nebraska. Not only was she back, she started for Nebraska. So that'll be something that I think it almost feels like you're getting a new player because she's been gone for so long with her injuries that it feels like she's kind of a part of this transfer portal class that Nebraska brings in because she's been gone for so long. But Britt Prince, the freshman, and we've talked a lot in the preseason run up to this year about how good the Big Ten freshmen are going to be. Britt Prince is another one to watch. She had 10 points in her first game as a Cornhusker with 5 assists, 2 steals, and only 1 turnover. So that's good stuff there. Widener did have 11 in her debut. And again, 6 Huskers in double figures. That is something that Amy Williams has always had at Nebraska is balance. And that appears to be the case again this year. In Bloomington, Indiana took down Brown 82-60. And you see that score and you just kind of move on and say, okay, good. Indiana won by 22. Let's keep moving. But Terry Moore to the press conference afterward called the game unacceptable. She was furious with Indiana's defense in this game. They gave up 11 Brown three-pointers. So you don't very often see a 22-point game in which the head coach is that frustrated with the way they played. I would imagine they're going to come out fired up when they take on Harvard on Thursday. Indiana was fine. Sydney Parrish had 20 points, 10 rebounds. Garzon's going to be a really good three-point shooter. She knocked down 4 in the exhibition and now 4 last night. I think the big thing for Indiana that I've been kind of harping to people in the lead up to this season, you obviously lose Mackenzie Holmes, and that's the worry with everybody is how are they going to fill those shoes? And they bring in Caroline Strickland from Tennessee. Who's it going to be, Meister or Strickland? To me, it was never about who's it going to be. To me, it was about can those two produce a Mackenzie Holmes type of output? Last night in game 1, Meister and Strickland combined for 30 points and 11 rebounds. That's obviously a really good night for Mackenzie Holmes, but that's great production out of your 5 spot. Strickland had 17. Meister had 13. They played really well. They stayed out of foul trouble. If you're going to get that type of production out of those two, where they're splitting minutes, staying fresh, I think that's the blueprint for Indiana. You're not going to get one person to step in and be Mackenzie Holmes, but if you've got Meister and Strickland playing together like that, off of each other, one's in, one's out, it's going to work really well. So, again, I think that's the way to do it. Turnover is also an issue for Indiana. They turned it over 18 times. They did force 18 Brown turnovers with a lot of active hands in the passing lanes. But, again, defense, something Terry Morin wants to see improved upon, and they'll be quickly back at it against Harvard on Thursday. Continuing to roll through some scores, Rutgers over Manhattan, 85-79, one of the closer games in the conference yesterday. Not a whole lot to take of this. I thought China Cornwell was great, 21 points, 15 boards off the bench. The big storyline to me is the health of Kaomi McMillan. 4 points, 2 of 2 shooting, and then with a little over 6 minutes to go in the first quarter, left the game with an eye injury and never returned. Coach Coqueluche Washington said after the game they have to evaluate her and figure out what the timetable is for her return. They're hoping sooner rather than later for McMillan, who's one of the talented freshmen of this conference. Rutgers does squeeze by Manhattan, but that's certainly a concerning moment to lose McMillan that early in the season. Hopefully they can get her back out there moving forward. For Rutgers, they will have Cornell coming up on Thursday. Oregon, a nonchalant 93-63 win over Cal Baptist. Again, a game I did not get much eyes on yesterday on the opener. Peyton Scott had 16, a player who missed some time with injury last year for Oregon. A lot of eyes on Deja Kelly. How would she perform? The North Carolina transfer, 10.7 boards, 8 assists. I'd say that's pretty good. Oregon's building up for their big game this Sunday against the 12th-ranked Baylor Bears. They also have Nevada coming up on Wednesday. Minnesota keeps it rolling in the non-con. They were great last year with the non-con. They win their opener over Central Connecticut State, 89-48. Remember how good of a start Minnesota got off to last year? Only one loss. It was to UConn. They were just rolling teams, and that's what they do here to Central Connecticut State. Mara Braun back, healthy, looking good. She had 17 points in this one. Annika Stewart, a transfer from Nebraska, 18 points and knocked down 7 of her 10 shots, including 3 of 4 from long range. Minnesota not going to be tested this week. They'll have Vermont, although Vermont is a very good non-con team, a good mid-major out of the East Coast there. So that'll be a good test for Minnesota Friday. Next weekend, though, not this weekend, but next weekend, they go to Tempe to play in an event against Oregon State and SMU. So we'll kind of see our first test for the Gophers. And then late night last night, it was Washington over Seattle, 95-53. Again, not a whole lot here to be deciphered. El Ladine, when we talked to Gary Hill Jr., the voice of the Huskies, he mentioned that she was ready for a breakout season, 18 points for her, 4 starters in double figures. That's how Washington did it in the Pac-12 with balance. They didn't have anybody averaging a ton of points, but they had a ton of people averaging between 8 and 12. So that is what Washington's going to want to do. They're going to try and get their starters to all contribute, 4 starters in double figures. For Washington, they were up 28-3 after 1 quarter of play. So that game was never in doubt for Washington. They're not going to be tested here for quite a while. They've got Pacific and Siena this week, Eastern Washington and Montana next week. So a pretty nice start for Washington as they get going here in the 24-25 season. We'll wrap the show with a look at the rest of the week. I mentioned my game of the week is number 11 Duke at number 18 Maryland on Sunday. Thursday night, though, a really intriguing matchup at the State Farm Center as number 19 Florida State travels to take on Illinois. That's Thursday night in Illinois' first game of the season. Very excited to see how that one goes. We'll get our first look at the Buckeyes tonight. They're hosting Wright State on Tuesday night. If you're listening to us after the game, then you know what happened. But if you're listening to us today on a Tuesday, they've got not Wright State, Cleveland State at 6 o'clock tonight. Wright State's at Wisconsin and Oakland at Michigan State. So we'll see the first action for those three Big Ten squads today. Wednesday, we'll get our first look at Purdue as well as Iowa and Northwestern. And then, as we mentioned, that big game on Thursday. Sunday's loaded as well. A really good Sunday of Big Ten women's basketball. We got that Duke-Maryland game to start it off. Iowa, Virginia Tech in Charlotte for the Allied tip-off. That's obviously two teams that are nowhere near the personnel they had last year, but still two very good teams. Number 6, Notre Dame travels to Mackey to take on Purdue, an interesting early season test for Katie Gerald's and the Boilermakers. I mentioned Illinois playing Florida State. Tough opening week for the Fighting Illini. They get Florida State and Marquette this week. They'll take on the Golden Eagles on Sunday. Both of them are at the State Farm Center, so beneficial in that sense for Illinois. And then number 12, Baylor is at Oregon Sunday night. That's an awesome game to see where the Ducks stack up with one of the nation's best out of the Big 12. I think this Oregon team is going to surprise some people. They seem on paper with some of the transfers they brought in, some of the people they returned from last year, that they are set to be much better than they were last season. Kelly Graves is a good coach. We know that. He was in the Final Four 5 years ago. So I would imagine Oregon ready to be a good team, and they could certainly send some shockwaves around college basketball if they can jump out with a win there against the Baylor Bears on Sunday night. So a great set of games this week all around the conference. Very excited to see what happens as we go forward. Again, if we don't talk a bunch about your team, I promise we're going to get around to it as we kind of go through. We've got a lot of things going on that we have had in the Big Ten. I'm trying to get my eyeballs on everything that I can, but again, I do work for the Hoosiers, so I do have games to broadcast and places to be with that, but I am trying my hardest. If we don't talk about your team in depth, it's probably not because I'm trying to ignore your team. It's just simply because I didn't get my eyes on them as much as maybe others, and I will try to spread that out as we go through opening week here. We're going to continue to do these shows on Tuesdays at noon. My hope is to be joined by other broadcasters and coaches and players as we go through the season to talk about some of these games and players of the week. Hopefully we'll have some of them come through the podcast. Again, Tuesday at noon. We'll try and do more of these live shows. We have had some people in the comments letting us know they are listening. We appreciate you guys being along for the ride live. If you're listening to us on podcast form, we're either going to be legitimately live or playing it live to where we can all watch it together on Tuesdays at noon on the Back Home Network YouTube channel. Can't promise we'll always be live because obviously schedules of players and coaches do require us to be a little bit flexible, but we'll record those and then play them on Tuesday at noon. So you can always catch us on the Back Home Network YouTube channel Tuesday at noon, and then shortly after we'll post it on the Apple and Spotify podcast feeds, which is where this one is going. If you're watching us, you tuned in late, you missed early on to the show, we will get you covered as we go through the rest of the week. And again, we'll do one episode a week. I know we've been kind of throwing some periodic episodes at you on random days. We're going to settle in now to one episode a week on Tuesdays and recap the action for the previous week, preview what's coming up, and hopefully get some interviews and some guests as we go. Well, I appreciate everybody who tuned in live. We had some good numbers here for our first live show on the Dribble Drive podcast. Hopefully the first of many. Enjoy some more basketball as you listen. Whatever day you're listening, there's probably some Big Ten basketball that night. There's certainly some tonight as we record here on this Tuesday. Enjoy your week. We'll talk to you guys next Tuesday. Again, give us a rating, a download, give us a subscribe. That kind of stuff really helps us. Yes, enjoy Big Ten basketball. Great games this week and this weekend. We'll talk to you guys next Tuesday on the Dribble Drive.